Ready for a deep dive into a topic most people try to avoid.
Okay.
Today, we're going to be exploring disease and death,
Hmm.
but through a biological lens.
Interesting.
Our guide is Living, Dying,
Mm-hmm.
a New Perspective
Okay.
by Manu Kothari and Lopa Mehta.
Right.
It really changes the way you think about health, illness, and mortality.
In what way?
Well, for one, the authors challenge the idea of disease as something we can always conquer,
Right.
and death as something we can avoid. They say this perspective leads to overtreatment, inflated healthcare costs,
Makes...
and unnecessary anxiety around aging.
I can see that.
They even suggest that disease itself may not be the root cause of death.
Oh, wow. That's a bold statement.
The book encourages us to view disease and death
Mm-hmm.
without all of the usual emotional baggage.
Okay.
They propose studying these topics without what they call loyalty altruism and misdirected philanthropy.
So you're saying a more objective scientific approach.
Exactly.
Interesting what happens when we do that.
Well, we begin to perceive life and death,
Mm-hmm.
not as adversaries,
Right.
but as two sides of the same coin.
Oh, I see.
Inseparable
Gotcha.
and essential elements of our existence.
That makes sense.
And this concept of the human body as a binary unit is really intriguing to me.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So the book breaks down this binary into cells and
Right.
collagen fibers.
Interesting.
These fundamental components interact and change over time.
Okay.
And that leads to what we see as disease.
So it's more about the natural progression of these building blocks rather than some invader attacking our bodies.
To a large extent, yes.
Fascinating.
The authors make a distinction between what they call interactional diseases,
Hmm.
which are those that are caused by external factors like infections
Oh, yeah.
and intrinsic disorders,
Gotcha.
which arise from internal processes. And they say it's the second category that holds the key to how our bodies age.
Intrinsic disorders.
Yes.
For like a pre-programmed breakdown sequence within our system.
Precisely. They even coined a term for this, cytofibernetics,
Okay.
to describe the study of these cellular and fiber changes over time. And their focus within intrinsic disorders is vascular changes
Right.
and collagenous disorders.
Ah, so wrinkles and joint stiffness aren't just signs of getting older.
Right.
They're manifestations of these deeper intrinsic processes.
Exactly.
That's a fascinating way to look at it.
And this leads to their view on aging in general.
Okay.
They don't see it as a decline, but rather as a calendar of events
Interesting.
starting at conception.
Instead of a slow descent into deterioration,
Right.
it's a programmed sequence.
That's right.
I see.
The book argues that the changes that we associate with getting older are actually part of a genetically determined course, and that this unfolds regardless of wear and tear.
That's a pretty big shift in perspective.
It is.
So does this mean that conditions like diabetes or cataracts in young people could be considered a form of senescence?
That's what the book suggests. It really challenges our assumptions about what it means to age.
Definitely.
Another interesting thing is that the authors critique the overemphasis on the gen suffix,
The gen suffix.
like carcinogen,
Okay.
estrogen, and so on in medical terminology.
What's their problem with these words?
They say that this pursuit of finding one single cause for complex diseases hasn't been very successful.
Okay.
Because in reality, it's usually far more complicated than that.
So the causes of disease are usually multifaceted and kind of interwoven with this intrinsic aging process.
Exactly.
It's all starting to make sense now.
And this leads into another concept they explore,
Okay.
the impartiality of disease and death.
Impartiality.
They argue that these forces impact every human being,
Gotcha.
regardless of their wealth, location, or lifestyle choices.
So no matter who you are or where you live, these are universal experiences.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
They give some compelling evidence for this,
Such as?
like the global distribution of stroke, which affects people across different demographics fairly consistently.
I see.
They even compare cancer rates between Parsis and Hindus in India.
To show that while specific disease types may vary, the overall occurrence remains relatively constant.
That's right.
Interesting.
They say that as we become more effective at reducing deaths from external factors,
Like infections and accidents.
exactly,
Okay.
more people will live to their natural lifespan and ultimately succumb to intrinsic diseases.
So we're not necessarily extending life.
Right.
We're just shifting the cause of death
Yes.
towards these inherent processes.
That's the idea.
Does this then tie back to the limitations of medical interventions?
It does indeed.
I'm ready to dive deeper into that.
All right.
So if medical interventions can't really extend our lifespans, are we just fighting a losing battle against time?
Kothari and Mehta would probably agree with that.
Mhm.
They say that treatments can help manage symptoms and maybe even improve quality of life, but they don't really change the overall course of intrinsic diseases.
So we can ease suffering, but not necessarily cheat death.
That's the idea.
Sounds like they're calling for a more realistic view of what medicine can actually achieve.
They are.
I see.
They even mention a study from Johns Hopkins about brain tumor scanning. And they found that even with early detection, using advanced technology,
Mhm.
there was no actual improvement in survival rates.
So earlier diagnosis didn't translate into longer lives.
Unfortunately not.
Wow, that's pretty sobering.
It is.
The authors go even further to critique the modern tendency to view disease as something to be conquered,
Right.
and they warn about the potential for iatrogenesis.
Iatrogenesis.
Isn't that when medical treatment itself actually causes harm?
You got it.
Oh, wow.
They say that as we push the boundaries of medical intervention, we need to be more aware of the potential downsides.
That makes sense.
It's a really important point to consider.
It definitely raises some big questions about how we approach death. If our lifespans are mostly predetermined,
Right.
and disease is a natural part of being human,
Uh-huh.
what's the best way to face our own mortality?
That's a huge question.
It is.
And the book introduces a really interesting concept.
Okay.
It's called thanatognosis.
Thanatognosis.
It sounds a little intimidating, I know,
It does.
but it's a powerful idea.
Okay, what is it?
It's essentially the art of recognizing and accepting that death is inevitable for both the patient and the doctor.
So it's about acknowledging the reality of death
Right.
and finding a way to come to terms with it.
Exactly.
I can see how that could be challenging for a lot of people.
It is for many.
But the authors believe that thanatognosis can help alleviate the fear and guilt that often surround death,
Right.
allowing people to really savor their remaining time. Makes sense.
It's about shifting the focus
Okay.
from fighting a losing battle
Right.
to making the most of whatever time you have left.
Prioritizing quality of life over quantity.
Precise.
Finding peace amidst the inevitable.
That's it.
It's a powerful concept.
It is.
And the authors see a crucial role for physicians in this process.
Absolutely.
Okay, how so?
They become guides,
Gotcha.
helping patients and their families navigate these very sensitive issues.
It sounds like it takes more than just medical expertise.
It does.
It requires compassion
Right.
and
Sure.
strong communication skills
You need all of that.
to deliver that kind of news with both honesty and empathy.
Exactly.
It must be a tough job.
It can be.
The authors stress that this communication should start early on,
Yes.
not just when death is imminent.
Yes, right.
So having those difficult conversations while there's still time to process
Right.
and make plans,
Exactly.
it sounds like a more proactive approach
It is.
rather than waiting until it's a crisis situation.
That's much better for everyone involved.
I agree.
The authors even go so far as to suggest that talking about death openly, even for people who are perfectly healthy, can actually enrich their lives.
By confronting our mortality,
Yeah.
we gain a deeper appreciation for life itself.
That's the idea.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
But this whole concept of thanatognosis seems to challenge the way medicine typically approaches death.
It does.
How so?
Well, they criticize what they call the medicalization of death.
Okay.
Its tendency to see it as a failure
Interesting.
rather than as just a natural part of life.
Like it's something to be avoided at all costs,
Exactly.
rather than a natural transition.
That's right.
They say this mindset leads to overtreatment,
Right.
unnecessary suffering,
Uh-huh.
and a loss of dignity in the dying process. It sounds like they're advocating for reclaiming death from the grip of medicine
They are.
and restoring its place as a natural, even spiritual event.
And they believe that embracing this perspective can be really liberating,
Liberating.
both for the individual
Yeah.
and their loved ones.
So letting go of the illusion of control,
Yes.
accepting the inevitable, and finding peace in the unknown.
That's the essence of it.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
But won't this idea be met with resistance,
Totally.
especially in a culture that's obsessed with youth and longevity?
That's true.
It seems to go against everything we're told about fighting aging and denying that death is inevitable.
It does challenge some very deeply held beliefs.
It's like asking people to completely reconsider their worldview.
In a way, it is.
But they believe that this shift in perspective is essential if we want to truly come to terms with our mortality
They do.
and live authentically.
Exactly.
It's a radical idea,
It is radical.
but one that resonates with a kind of primal truth.
I think so too.
It makes you question our societal obsession with trying to avoid aging and defy death.
It does.
If we're all going to die anyway,
Right.
why not focus on living well and dying with dignity?
Those are the important things.
That's a profound question.
It is.
And the authors provide a framework for doing just that.
They do.
But they don't stop there.
No, they don't.
They go even deeper, exploring the very essence of life and death beyond the confines of our physical bodies.
Interesting.
It's like they're bridging the gap between science and spirituality,
I see that.
blending rational thought
Yes.
with a kind of intuitive understanding.
That's a good way to put it.
They tackle some of the biggest questions out there.
Like what?
What does it mean to be alive?
Mm-hmm.
What happens after we die?
Right.
Is there a larger purpose to our existence?
Those are the questions that have always captivated humanity.
They have.
And the authors offer a really unique perspective, weaving together biological principles, philosophical insights, and spiritual wisdom.
Wow, a fascinating combination.
It is.
It sounds like a blend of ancient wisdom and modern understanding.
That's a good way to describe it.
They challenge the traditional definitions of life and death, proposing a more holistic view that goes beyond our physical forms. So it's not just about whether or not your heart is beating.
Not according to them.
Interesting. So what is it about then?
They argue that life is a continuous process that connects us to a vast cosmic web.
A cosmic web.
That stretches beyond the limitations of our physical bodies.
So it's like we're all part of a larger energy field.
Right.
A universal consciousness that transcends the individual.
That's the idea.
It's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is.
And they draw upon the concept of the subtle body.
The subtle body.
This non-physical dimension of our being that persists even after our physical death.
So not an ending.
Right.
But a transition to a different state of being.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And they explore this through various lenses.
Yay.
Looking at near-death experiences.
Right.
Ancient spiritual traditions. And even quantum physics.
Quantum physics.
Yep.
That's unexpected.
It is.
But they're not afraid to push the boundaries of conventional thinking.
They definitely aren't.
They see connections between the interconnectedness that's described in quantum physics and the spiritual idea of a unified consciousness.
It sounds like they're suggesting that science and spirituality are converging.
They are.
Pointing towards a deeper understanding of reality.
They believe that our understanding of life and death is evolving. And moving beyond the limits of materialistic science.
It's not just about biology.
Right.
It's about consciousness, energy, and the interconnectedness of everything.
Exactly.
Wow, this is heavy stuff.
It is.
But they believe that embracing this broader perspective can actually help us be less afraid of death.
That's their belief.
Okay.
And allow us to live more fully in the present moment.
So, if death isn't the end,
right,
but a transition to a different realm of existence, maybe we can approach it with curiosity instead of fear.
That's the goal.
I like that.
It's a much healthier way to think about it.
But the idea that life continues after death requires a pretty big leap of faith for a lot of people.
It does.
It's not easy to accept.
No, it's not.
Especially when there's no scientific proof.
And the authors acknowledge that. They say that these concepts can't be easily proven or disproven using scientific methods.
Right. So it comes down to trusting your intuition, exploring different perspectives.
Yes.
And acknowledging that there might be more to life than what we can perceive with our five senses.
That's the spirit of inquiry that they're encouraging.
We appreciate that.
But it's important to remember that we're still in the realm of speculation here.
Speculations.
They're presenting possibilities, not definitive truths.
Right.
They want us to form our own beliefs about life and death.
Okay, I understand.
But their core message is clear.
What is it?
Death is not something to be feared.
Gotcha.
It's a natural part of life's grand cycle.
And through that acceptance,
right,
we can gain a deeper appreciation for life.
Yes.
And a profound connection to the universe.
That's their belief.
This has been a really mind-bending exploration so far.
It has.
Are there any more insights to uncover in Living, Dying?
We've only scratched the surface.
Why?
There's still so much more to explore.
All right. Well, listeners, get ready for the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll delve into the practical implications of these ideas.
Right.
And how they can transform our approach to both life and death.
It's going to be fascinating.
So we've been through some pretty thought-provoking concepts exploring disease, death, And even the idea of a subtle body that exists beyond our physical form.
We have.
Where does living dying go from here?
Well, the authors really push for a change in how we think.
Okay.
They want us to move away from this fear and denial of death, which is something that's so common in modern society.
It almost feels like we're going back to a more ancient understanding.
Right.
Maybe even a primal understanding.
Exactly.
Of where we fit in the grand scheme of things.
And they suggest that by embracing our mortality, we can actually experience the present moment more fully.
Really?
Appreciating the beauty and wonder of life with a whole new intensity.
It's kind of like that saying, live each day as if it were your last.
It is similar.
But it feels like they're suggesting something even deeper than that.
I think so too.
So what is it?
They're arguing that when we acknowledge the reality of death,
Okay.
we can let go of anxieties and attachments that might be preventing us from experiencing true freedom and fulfillment.
Letting go of the illusion of control.
Exactly.
Surrendering to the flow of life.
Right.
With all of its uncertainties and impermanence.
That's it.
It's a pretty radical concept.
It is.
And they're saying that this acceptance of death can actually lead to a spiritual awakening.
That's what they believe.
Wow.
A connection to something much larger than ourselves.
So death becomes a kind of gateway.
In a way, yes.
To a deeper understanding of the mysteries of existence.
That's beautifully put.
It is a beautiful thought.
And they believe that when we confront our fear of death,
it unlocks a source of wisdom and strength.
Interesting.
That can transform our lives.
So death becomes a teacher.
Yes.
Guiding us towards a more authentic and meaningful way of being.
Precisely.
It's not about seeking death,
No.
but learning from it.
That's right.
They're encouraging us to integrate this awareness of death into our daily lives.
Exactly.
Using it as a way to grow personally and spiritually. So living with intention.
Right.
Recognizing that our time is limited.
And making the most of it.
But this whole idea of embracing death seems so different from how most people think.
It goes against a lot of cultural norms.
Especially in Western societies.
Absolutely.
Where death is often a taboo subject. We've created this culture of denial.
We have.
Pretending that death doesn't exist until it's right in front of us.
And the authors believe that this denial actually hurts us.
Okay. How so?
It prevents us from preparing for death. Both practically and emotionally.
So when it does happen?
We're totally caught off guard. Struggling to make sense of it.
Right.
In the midst of grief and confusion.
By acknowledging death's natural role in life.
Right.
They believe that we can approach it with more peace and clarity.
So it's not about dwelling on death, but incorporating an awareness of it into our lives.
In a positive way.
Exactly.
It allows us to live authentically, to make conscious choices.
Right.
And to really appreciate each moment.
This is a really powerful perspective.
It is.
What are some practical steps we can take?
They offer a number of suggestions.
Okay, like that.
Simplifying our lives.
Okay.
Cultivating meaningful relationships.
Right.
And spending time in nature.
So getting rid of distractions.
Exactly.
And focusing on what truly matters.
That's the key.
Letting go of material possessions and the need for external validation so that we can pursue our passions.
Right.
And live in alignment with our values.
They believe that nurturing relationships with loved ones creates a sense of belonging and support.
Makes sense.
That can help us through difficult times.
Including death itself.
Yes.
Those human connections are so important.
They are.
They bring joy and meaning to our existence.
And spending time in nature is also crucial.
Okay. I can see that.
It provides solace and inspiration.
Nature constantly reminds us of the cycle of life and death.
It does.
The ebb and flow of creation and destruction.
And connecting with that rhythm can help us find peace and acceptance.
When we're confronted with our own mortality,
that's their belief.
This exploration of life and death has been truly amazing.
It's been a journey.
Challenging.
Yes.
Thought-provoking.
Absolutely.
And ultimately inspiring.
I agree.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to give our listeners some key takeaways.
Sounds good.
From Living Dying. A new perspective.
All right.
10 insights that stood out to me.
Okay.
Number 1. Disease and death are not enemies to be defeated.
Right.
They're intrinsic parts of being human, woven into the very fabric of life.
Makes sense.
Number 2. Aging is not a decline. It's a genetically orchestrated unfolding.
Like a calendar of events.
Exactly.
Starting at conception.
Number 3. Medical interventions have limitations. They can ease suffering and enhance quality of life.
Right.
but they can't dramatically extend our lifespans.
That's a hard truth for many to accept.
It is. Number 4, time, not disease, is what ultimately determines when we die. We each have a built-in timer,
Okay.
and when it runs out, that's it.
Regardless of our health status.
Exactly. Number 5, trying to pinpoint a single cause of death is an oversimplification. It's a complex biological process.
Right.
Number 6, the most reliable indicator of life is a functioning circulatory system.
The heart.
The heart is truly the engine of life.
And when it stops.
That's the end of our physical journey.
Number 7, recognizing and accepting the inevitability of death.
The practice of thanatognosis
Yes.
can actually empower us to focus on living fully.
In the time we have left.
Number 8, open and honest conversations about death
With doctors and loved ones.
can alleviate fear and anxiety,
Absolutely.
leading to a more peaceful and dignified dying process.
I agree.
Number 9, embracing our mortality can actually enrich our lives,
Interesting.
prompting us to live with purpose.
An appreciation for each moment.
Number 10, there's more to life than meets the eye.
Okay.
Our consciousness extends beyond our physical bodies.
Connecting us to something much larger.
So much to ponder.
There is.
Those are 10 profound insights from Manu, Kothari, and Lopa Mehta.
Lots to think about.
We encourage you to explore these ideas further.
And see how they resonate with you.
If this deep dive has sparked your curiosity,
Check out the full book.
you can find Living, Dying, A New Perspective online or at your local library,
It's a book that will stay with you.
making you think about the big questions.
The nature of life.
At the
The
end,
universe itself.
this has been a truly mind-expanding deep dive.
We've learned so much.
Thank you for joining us.
On this exploration of what it means to be human,
Remember,
embracing our mortality,
might just be the key.
to unlocking a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Until next time,
Keep exploring
keep questioning.
and keep diving deep.